All right, guys, I know this isn't our typical setup for our Bible study night, and I did tell you that we were going to talk about giving and receiving, but first we get to talk about elements of communication. I know the wives are like, yes, and the husbands are like, man, I thought you were talking about giving and receiving. I barely got here because of that, but you said it was about giving and receiving into a relationship, not tithing. So we all showed up, and now you're going to talk about communication. There is a reason behind that. Friday, my board meeting got canceled for Racing Against Heroin. RacingAgainstHeroin.org is the nonprofit organization that I run. Quick insight on that. And Monday, my meeting at work, which I was going to give this presentation to, got canceled as well. So you are the lucky ducks of elements of communication. This assignment is 2 days late, so you can heckle me later. So, we all know communication can be tough. Sometimes we make it harder than what it is. Passing by, I heard a conversation, these two ladies, it was hilarious. First lady goes, my son came home to visit me on summer vacation. The second lady goes, did you meet him at the airport? The first lady goes, no, I've known him all his life. Yes, I know that horrible joke, but it just shows how easy communication can be and how hard it can be at the same time. What I'm going to talk about is the part of communication called encoding. Encoding is the message from the speaker or the source being sent to the audience or the other person. Encoding is the element that is most vital to delivering the intended message. This is how the source of the speaker converts information to the recipient so they can absorb and decode the message. The reason some of us aren't great communicators because we just make it too hard. The people that are experts at communication make it too hard, and then we also make it too hard on ourselves. John Fisk, he's a communicating expert, defines encoding as consists of both signs and rules that determine that how and in the context these signs are used and how they can be combined to form more complex messages. Wow. That's why communication is tough. We could reread that 2 or 3 times, unpack it for 45 minutes, and still not know what that means. Secondly, communication, we make it tough on ourselves. The things in my head don't make sense to you, or the things in my head don't make sense to you because I'm not putting it into context to where you can understand it. And then the communication part is they use words like sender, encode, message, receiver, decode, channel, mediation, and noise. Are we trying to hook up a TV and a satellite, or are we trying to talk to each other? That's why we try to make it too complicated for what we are doing. It's just talking. Now, encoding and knowing your audience, if you're speaking to your wife or if you're speaking in a group context like this is, or if we're speaking to a certain audience, we speak in different ways, or we put things into context so they can understand them. When I was mentoring teenagers a few years ago, I would read them a passage from 1 Kings. It's 1 Kings 22, 48 and 49. King Jehoshaphat also built a fleet of trading ships to sail to Ophir for gold, but these ships never set sail, for they met with disaster in their home port. At one time, Isaiah, son of Ahab, had proposed to Jehoshaphat, let my men sail with your men in these ships, but Jehoshaphat refused the request. Well, I wrap this in the context that in your teen years or in your early 20s, when you're in college, you're building up the ship, your gold mining ships or your treasure ships. And once you get out of school, you're setting them a sail. The ships in terms are your education, your experiences, And when you set them to sail for your treasure, is becoming an adult and living on your own. And if you don't use your experiences and your education properly, your ships are sank or shipwrecked because of a storm or this and that. And then I also would roll that his friend was trying to give him godly advice or good advice to let his ship sail with trusted men. Well, it also plays a part of who you choose to be your friends or the advice you listen to and how that will affect your life going forward. I think it basically that comes down to knowing your crowd or your subject matter and being able to encode a message so the receiver can decode it themselves. The purpose of communication is to get your message across to others clearly and ambiguously. Doing this involves effort from both the sender of the message and the receiver. It is just as important for you to pay attention to me as me to you. If I'm not paying attention to you, not reading your body language, your facial expressions, I'm not doing my job as a sender of the message. I can see that you're not paying attention. Maybe I need to change my tone or delivery. Or if I see that you're confusion on your face, maybe I can redo the context or try to explain it before I go on. Just things like that. And that's all the responsibility of the sender to encode the message so it can be received and decoded by the person listening to the speech or the message or whatever it is. A fact is communication is only successful when both the sender and the receiver understand the key message, like I said, and successfully communicate your message to convey your thoughts and ideas effectively. When you don't have your thoughts and your ideas together and trying to do it, necessarily reflect either you go a rabbit trail or never get to the point. And then wrapping this all up real quick, guys, before we get going in another direction, we tend to make communication scarier than what it has to be. Knowing who you are talking to, knowing the crowd, knowing the context of what you're trying to speak, all plays a vital role. And then to deliver your message effectively, you must commit to breaking down the barriers that exist between the different stages of communication. Let's begin with the message itself. If your message is too lengthy, disorganized, or contains errors, it's hard for the receiver to decode what you're trying to say or understand what you're trying to tell them. And then, of course, we all know Proverbs 15:2, the tongue of wise command knowledge, but the mouth of fools is poor folly. And that to me is when you have a word of wisdom, a spirit of wisdom, like it's said in the New Testament, decoding and giving it context so the person can understand it, gives wise knowledge. And then there is a reason that God gave us 2 ears, is to listen, but he gave us one mouth to speak, so we need to choose the words wisely that we say so the listener can understand them. And with that, I thank you guys.